Welcome to the ASQ Podcast, where life transitions become your greatest teachers. In this episode, we're diving into something sacred, endings. But not just any endings, the kind that dismantle your identity and force you to rebuild from the ground up. What if these endings aren't punishments, but invitations? Invitations to reclaim your life, your voice, and your purpose. Let's explore how loss and letting go can become portals to the life you were meant to lead. Stay tuned. How are you doing?
I am excellent. How are you?
I'm good.
Good?
I'm excited. I'm just staring at your shirt.
You like my shirt?
Sophisticated animal. What exactly does that mean? I've always thought you were an animal. Like every time we go to a restaurant, they say you can't bring in animals. I always say, Omar, you can't come with me. I'll bring some food out for you.
No, I've been thinking about this, right? It's part of our evolution as human beings, right? So as we evolve from Homo sapiens to Homo spiritus, right? We still are in this stage that we still have a lot of animal instincts, but we have a lot of high intellect. So we're a sophisticated animal.
Oh, now I want to stop you because this could be an episode.
You could be, right? but the idea is that
Keep it brief.
We're still in an evolution, right?
Yeah.
Because even though we are very, very intellectually driven and logic driven, right? A lot of what we use that intellect for is primarily for animalistic tendencies, impulses and desire for conquest, or the desire to oppress others, or desire to take from others.
Right.
So, when I look at our transition, we're just in the stage of being sophisticated animals.
Interesting. Well, that's a good segue into what we're talking about today.
Absolutely. Oh, it's good.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, I mean, according to our paper here, it's about sacred endings and new beginnings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How to reclaim yourself after letting go.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the idea of ending something, right? It's so challenging.
It is.
Because it evokes something new to emerge.
Yeah, and that's scary.
Yeah. And then what happens is that we like to stay when something doesn't end. I think that we did that last episode, or one of our episodes previously, when we still hold on to things when they are done and ended.
Yeah.
We have a hard time disconnecting from it all.
Totally. Yeah. So let me start by saying that every ending is a beginning in disguise. And I think for when I read that, I was kind of like, that's hard to wrap my head around, because it's like, what does that mean exactly? But after I thought about it, I was like, okay, every ending is a beginning in disguise. Okay. So this is an area of my life that is ending, and it's a beginning, but we don't see it that way because we are stuck in, because sometimes we're not deciding that this is ending for us, right?
Yeah.
Something else is deciding for us.
But it's difficult. It's challenging as well, because this is not something that happens physically.
Right.
It is something that happens psycho-spiritually.
Right. So
it's
explain
like,
that a little bit.
And it's because it doesn't. There are endings that happen physically, right? Like you graduate high school and you go into college. You graduate college, you go into work, right? So those are definite things that have a beginning and an end, right? You could end a relationship physically,
right?
But the psychological and the spiritual separation is something that it's much, much harder to let go.
Yeah.
That's why it's so hard to overcome a broken heart. Right. That's why when you talk about your transition that you're in, it's not physical.
Oh no.
It's really all mental and spiritual and psychologically. What is it that defines me now?
Right.
What is it, like, literally all this stuff is gone now. Who am I?
Right. And that's I think the difficult part is that you're right. You can lose somebody, or have a broken heart, or end a relationship, or even retire from a job, or whatever that ending is. And physically it's like, okay, this happened. And sometimes I mean, even when I graduated from college courses or whatever, I remember walking away going, oh my God, I'm done. Okay, I'm done. But so physically I was done. But mentally, I was like, oh, this is so weird.
Yep.
I'm not like studying anymore. I'm not, especially when I finished my terminal degree, because I was just like, what do I do with myself now? Like, I can't go any further. I've earned everything. Like, what do I do?
But it's easy. Hard. It's easy. Sorry to interrupt, because the idea is that it is so challenging And I know people will say, well, you should have set a plan and this and that and the other. And then, yeah, you do that. But there are things that happen to us psychospiritually that forces us to end something, and something primarily within us, right? And that presents the opportunity for something new to emerge,
right,
or something new to be rediscovered.
right.
And that's kind of like the premise of what we're talking about.
Right. But I think that's the premise of what we're talking about, but it's not easy to get to that place.
It's nothing is again, I go back to the Quran quote, how dare you think you're going to enter the garden of bliss without facing the trials as those that came before you.
Right.
You have to walk it, you have to live it. Nothing that is worth or any worth is cheap.
Yeah.
Right. There's that concept in Kabbalah, is like the braid of shame, right? When somebody just gives you stuff, there's this thing that actually becomes problematic, right? So everything that is worthwhile requires some level of give and take, right?
Yeah.
It's like the lottery people. A lot of the people, if they win the lottery, like that life doesn't turn out as good as they think that it was going to turn out.
Right.
Because it's such a change so quickly that it came so sudden, and you didn't really have to work for it. It challenges your soul.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. That's for another show too. All right. So before we go any further, I wanted to share a quote, and that is that sometimes the most courageous act is not holding on, but learning how to let go with grace. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Just because that's what I was just talking about with, physically you can walk away and it's whatever, but how do you let go with grace?
Yeah.
Spiritually.
We are in a very interesting stage of our evolution, right? This the advent of AI, robotics, and things of that nature, right? There's a lot of things that are happening in the micro and the macro, in terms of, that's why you feel so much turmoil happening, because we are in that transition, right? And that transition from the old way of being to the new way of being hasn't really clearly been defined. We don't have models to do that. So literally it's left up to us to figure out that journey of the transition, or how to find, okay, this version of me just ended. Now, what is the new version that's going to come out?
Yeah.
That requires an adventure in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right. But we get so caught up right now in our traumas and in our negative experiences and things like that we hold on to them, and we don't know how to end them, because they're defining us now.
It's our identity.
It's our identity, right? So then now is that, it has to stop. The fear is what comes up next, like you said.
Right.
Well, that should be actually an opportunity for you to open yourself up,
right,
to the universal possibilities that there are. But this is why I think society does people a disservice, in that we've created structures that are so rigid, so soul crushing, that it doesn't allow us the flexibility to explore and create. I mean, like, people talk about the markets, and the markets is a good example, because the markets is nothing more than the desires and emotions of people. That's that's a stock market, any type of market. That's what it is the perceptions and the emotions of people. But if you look at it, it's like not a lot of new creative ideas are coming from our society, right? It's almost like our society, little by little, is dying, because we're still holding on to outdated ideas.
Right.
And the point is to be able to, as individuals, because I don't think we could do it as a collective yet. People want to they want to save the world, and I completely disagree with that. It's like it starts with people. I think it starts with you to go in that journey to create something or recreate something that's already in place from an open perspective, rather than this confined idea of this is how things ought to be, and we have to fight to maintain it. That's, I think, is what in the macro, that's what we're going through. And individually, we feel it more because there's so much uncertainty.
Well, there is a lot of uncertainty when you're not doing something that's in the box, right?
But even in the box, there's a lot of uncertainty.
Well, I was just going to say before you just jumped on that.
My bad.
So
Sorry.
there is a lot of let me do air quotes for the people who aren't watching us, right? Certainty about being in the box, about It's like what I have just recently gone through. I always insisted I got to have a job. I got to have a job. I got to have a job because that's security. Money's going to be coming in if I have a job. But that's not really the case, right? I just had this conversation with a friend of mine last night, where she had said, well, I'm just so thankful because, I have the security of my paychecks coming in. And I'm like, but do you really have security there?
To an extent, they do.
They do, to an extent. But at any moment, anything can happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just one example. It's not a concrete example, but it's an example,
Yeah.
And so for me, I think it's like, for me going through this process of, the sacred ending, new beginning, and then reclaiming myself after letting go, I'm at that place. I'm at that threshold, right? Where I am, a lot of things have come to an end for me. And I'm just now accepting it. Some of these things happened months or maybe even years ago. And I'm just coming to that place where I'm starting to like, okay, it's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. Stop. Let it go. Yeah. And physically, I did that. Months ago, years ago, whatever, even more recently. But in my mind, psycho-spiritually, I was still mourning that. You know what I mean? And wanting to retain that identity because it's what defined me as a person, as an individual, right? And so I think that leads us into the next, into like the meat and bones of what we're talking about, because a lot of that, the opportunities for me to be to be the person I'm supposed to be, that I'm meant to be, right, is shedding that what you call survival identity, because that's what I was in for the first 50 years of my life, survival, because that's all I knew. Yep. This is what was created for me. This is what, I was born into a family that you got to work, you got to make money, you got to do, you got to, don't worry about school, whatever. And that was the way that it went. You know what I mean? An identity was crafted for me, even though I didn't, I thought it was okay because that's just the way that we're brought up. This is the way that we're taught to be this way. And so for me, it's really difficult because it's like, and because I'm going through it right now, is understanding that was me in survival mode, and now I want to be in freedom mode. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and again, it's like I don't want the listeners to think that I'm advocating. We are advocating complete responsibility. The problem lies, and this is what you said, get a job, get financially secure, and all that stuff, right? The problem lies that, and I remember Joseph Campbell had this line that our society is so financially and economically driven that but it doesn't come out of our life, right? There's life affirming things. It doesn't manage that, right? Because it primarily focuses all on the finances. Everything that you hear, it's all around finances. And although that's a very important aspect of life, it takes away from the more depth of being a human being. So that's why you're saying what you're talking about is the social conditioning that you received as a child, to say you got to do this, then you got to work, and people work and people do that. And those things are important. But the problem is that, are we finding meaning in those things? Number one. Or number two, are those things that we're holding on to so much, so traditionally, the work structure, the work hours, even the work itself, are those things soul affirming, right? Because you always are going to have this chasm of the people that create something and the people that visualize it and create it versus the people that are going to implement it, right? So you talk about capita and the labor force. It's always going to be that battle, right? But we're seeing that this is transforming in a macro, right? But you see how that tradition affects you as an individual, because this is what you were taught. Now you're changing, right? Now we are saying this, but what you're not disputing the importance of finances.
Not at all.
Right?
Yeah.
What you're looking for is another way in which that is taken care of, but you also, your soul, your essence is being affirmed.
Correct.
Right? That is the balance that we are failing to we are failing to strike. So yeah, I mean, it's about redefining how we operate and we function, right? Because we, that idea of goods and services and how we are going to distribute natural resources is an important thing.
Right.
But also how we're going to live a human life.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because it reminded me of a story. I might have mentioned it before on a podcast previously, but you made me think of, because people want to have soul work, right? To do something that you're living from your essence. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to jump off and take a leap of faith. It could be that you find it in a particular, workplace or a job, right? And it made me think about this, because sometimes it's just a matter of shifting your mindset. If that's what you want to live from, then, and you are at a job, and let's just say that you don't have, the skills or whatever, the skills that you have are for this job or whatever. I'm not going to get into all that, but shifting your mind and how can this have meaning for you, right? And they did that. These hospital workers would go into the hospital, and their mission, their sole work was to maintain this hospital in pristine format. And the reason that they did that is because they knew that there were people in the hospital that were healing. Some of them were, going through, death and whatnot. And they cleaned it so much so that the families and people wanted to be present. And it was soul work for these people, and it was meaningful to them. And it's living from that essence, right?
And you got to find out what it is. And this is what happens when you die to the always and trying to redefine something new, right? There's that tension constantly. There's always that friction because, oh my God, it's like, what is this going to look like?
Right.
How am I going to be? If I'm not who I thought I've always been, then who am I now? This changes, and you see this in artists a lot. I mean, one of the artists that comes to mind when it comes to this idea of shedding the old, starting new was Prince. Prince was always reinventing himself, and changing, but he didn't change because of the music industry. He just did it because it was something that he wanted to do. So he was always very independent. And that's one thing that has been the domain primarily of artists, to stop everything that was old and go and discover something new. But at that, what we are encouraging is by going through that transition yourself, you could actually begin to reinvent the world around you, right? When you are open to possibilities, when you are open to different approaches as a family member, as a leader in whatever surroundings you are, that death and resurrection into something new revitalizes everything around us, right? And we need that now. We need that individual's journey, right? Because that individual's journey is the one that is going to transform our current situation. That's the one that's really going to bring about, but it takes courage.
It does.
It takes courage.
I would say that, and I like that you're saying that, because I've been fortunate, because I've been able to have, help from you. I've had somebody who's been there with me, kind of giving me suggestions when I was confused. I had somebody to give me that guidance and to help me through these really very questioning times for me, and difficult times, right? And so so before we go any further, I'd really like to share some of the things that we can offer, because I think that we have the ability to help guide people through this process, through this transformation. Life transitions can feel like a crisis, but what if they're actually a calling? If today's conversation is hitting home, maybe it's time for a guide in your quest. At A Soul's Quest, we offer one-on-one and group guidance for individuals and professionals navigating career shifts, identity changes, or simply the quiet knowing this isn't who I'm meant to be anymore. Our guidance isn't about fixing you. It's about walking with you as you release what's no longer serving you, reconnect with your purpose, and create a life aligned with your truth. Ready to go deeper? Visit asoulsquest.com to book a free discovery call. You don't have to navigate this transitions alone.
And it's interesting that you said that, right? Because, and I appreciate the fact that you're thankful that I was there, right?
Yeah, I don't know how I would be going through this if I didn't have somebody to help me out, to be honest.
And I didn't.
You didn't, I know. Well, you did have me but I didn't understand what you were
Mhm,
going through.
mhm.
And that was hard.
Yeah, and I'm hard-headed, and I'm stubborn, to, and I don't listen a lot to a lot of different people.
This is being recorded, right?
Yeah, it is. It's
Great.
out there. It's out there. It's out there.
Good.
There's a little rebelliousness in me when it comes to traditions and listening to the status quo or the
Mhm.
standard answers. Doesn't do well for me.
Yeah.
So for me, it really was helpful to read, to to look and go to places like the Kabbalah Center, for instance. When I met Abraham and Shimon and a lot of the people, David, and I learned a lot from them
Mhm.
in terms of how to look at things. But I was always, it's for me, it was that desire inside to wanting to know,
Mhm.
you know, and made a lot of mistakes, and I failed a lot in many different things. But I'm thankful that somehow I was given that wherewithal
Mhm.
to continue to search for something, to
Mhm.
watch for something,
Right.
to seek and try to truly understand, like, what is it, what is this, like, what does it mean?
Yeah, you were very curious about your transformation. You were very curious about, why am I feeling that way? I was more like, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to go through this. I don't know what's this about.
Hmm.
Maybe it's menopause. What's going on with me?
Yeah.
Why is this happening? But I can tell you that having gone through, and continuing to go through the process of discovering new things, and feeling different things, and
Hmm.
having signs come up for me. For example, I think that sometimes people dismiss dreams
Yeah.
as whatever, but the dreams that I've been having have been very, very
Vivid.
vivid and very telling.
Hmm.
Very, very, and it's interesting if you're willing to dig deep as to what the significance of those things are for you in your life as you are transforming and evolving, right?
Yep.
And um but having somebody to you know there's this comfort, that to know that there's somebody there. That's why I felt it was important to share,
Hmm.
that we have services, and we offer this to individuals who are seeking to go through this
Yeah.
process.
I'm glad that you brought that up about um just the seeking, and then you don't want to deal with this stuff, right? Like, it's been, it was years that you avoided
Yeah,
really seeing things,
totally.
and really confronting things,
Hmm.
even though but one thing that happens is, as someone that's gone that attempted to walk and understand things, and by no means, I mean, I'm a human being, so I struggle and I make mistakes, and I have all the same energies that everybody has, and nothing special about me and anything.
Right.
But what happens is, when you begin to peel that layers, right, like the onions, right, and listen to those little moments, right, like, you got a dream, but you listen to it, or you paid attention, and it's like, well, what does that mean,
Hmm.
right? Or something happened, and a little synchronicity happens, and you don't dismiss it, you listen to it,
Right.
right? Our soul speaks to us in many different ways, right? I was telling someone today, it's like, I cannot tell you how the books that I read came to me, like they just did,
Hmm.
right? Like, you read Picoult and Mariotti, right? And
Hmm.
you like that,
I do. I like
you like
those.
those type of books, right? I have no interest whatsoever
No.
in that.
Yeah.
I like, for some reason, I've always been inclined to this, spiritual psychological and mythological type of things,
Mm.
and you start thinking about how your soul communicates with you with different things. Some people see visions, some people do whatever. I don't see any visions. Some people get like really vivid dreams, and I don't
Yeah.
get vivid dreams like the ones that you get,
Yeah, I
right?
do get some
But
vivid
when you
ones.
start really understanding that, because I don't really fully understand it, right? Because how is it that the universe just explains things to you and makes you see things, and then society tells you, you're crazy for seeing that. But the reality is that when you begin to really listen to you,
Hmm.
there's something that evokes action too,
And curiosity.
and curiosity, right?
Hmm.
So I am not an advocate of modern spirituality in terms of just feeling good and then demonizing other people because, oh, they have their demons in them or whatever. I'm not that type. No. Right. And the reason being is because, just as I've arrived at this particular stage in my journey, different people are in their quest. Different people are at different stages in their quest as well. Some people are ahead, some people are right here with me, some people are a little further behind. But that's the thing that we have to start realizing, that the goal of psychology and the goal of science and the goal of spiritual teachings and religion is to help you see, right, the you in others, right? Science has already proven that everything is connected. This is not a this is not a scientific debate, right? Everything is connected. We are all connected, right? So we're all part of the whole. So when you see Earth from the outside looking in, you don't see any separations. You see oneness, right? One big rock just suspended in there, right? So from that point, you have to start seeing yourself as a part of that. And but you got to follow these things. The moment you start dismissing it, man, what is that? I mean, that book, I don't want to read that book. That book's stupid. I had somebody that told me this, like, you gave me a book, and then I gave him I gave him The Alchemist, and he was like, "What the hell is this?" You know, and I'm like, "Freaking Alchemist! What are you talking about?" Right? But it's just not how their soul speaks, and there's no judgment in it. It's just what it is.
Right. And I think that, you say that, but at the end of the day, there are going to be those people that are like myself, and they're going to be very resistant. And I think that for those people, I get you. I feel you. But I also know that based on my experience, that I just said this earlier to somebody else that we were talking to. I said, if you don't embrace it and recognize that this is happening in your life, you need to decide, or life will decide for you. And so I think sometimes it's easier for some people. It's easier for life to decide. I think for me, life decided. That was that's what happened with me, right? To a certain extent, right? What are you laughing about?
No, when you say that, it reminds me of a line for one of my favorite movies, The Kingdom of Heaven.
Oh.
And he says, well, what becomes of us? The world would decide. The world always decides, right?
Yeah, and it does.
And it does.
It does.
And here's the thing, right? Which goes kind of like on your point. You have to get to a point in life that to normalize change, right? To normalize discomfort, to normalize uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
Because the reality of the fact is that we're creating, and this is one of the things that after living my profession, and this is one of the things that I saw coming in, which is this idea of always creating spaces that if something wasn't going my way, I needed to go into this space, right? Like we're trying to sterilize life.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have to do a much better job at normalizing discomfort.
Yeah.
We have to do a better job by understanding the ebbs and flows of the universe.
We have to do a better job normalizing a lot of things.
Yeah, but it starts.
But I get what you mean, because it was interesting. I had this. I attended this group thing last night, and there were a lot of things that came out of this because it was a safe space, and can talk about this openly and not be judged, and it's not going anywhere. And one of the things that was like the kind of like the like it was just a common denominator was that, but people don't talk about this. You can't just talk about this. You can't just say this out loud, and it saddened me, because I was like, wow, how sad is it that this particular group, it was women. So in this case, it was a women who were like, we're not allowed to not, to show our weakness. We're not allowed. We have to do this and we have to do that.
Men.
And exactly, it's the same thing. It's men and women, whatever. And it's like, there's so many things that we need to normalize. And I think that's one of the goals that I have with A Soul's Quest, with the ASQ podcast, is normalizing that this shit ain't easy. Normalizing that this is stuff that is like, I mean, the way that this came on for me was not in any way, shape, or form how I expected it. Like I said, I was like, am I going through menopause? Like, what's happening here?
And the thing is, right?
And I know some people are gonna be like, you are going through menopause. I'm not yet.
So in one of the things that to criticize certain things, right? Like criticize religions in particular. Because religions were the mechanism to be able to guide us through this, through accepting life's changes, to normalize the discomfort and the change. And the problem is that religions are out of date. All of them are. I'm not going to shy away from that. They all are out of date, right? Because they all arose from a certain time and place, right? A different environment, a different set of circumstances, a different set of understanding the universe and nature itself. We're past that.
Mm-hmm.
We're way beyond. We're still holding on to ideas that no longer serve us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to revitalize these ideas that no longer serve us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we're holding on to it. And you can see us, it's breaking at the seams because we're trying to hold on to these ideas that no longer serve our society as a whole.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And as individuals, there is no reason why a place like us now should be going through the mental anguishes that we go through. Right? We're holding on to these traditions that they're not good anymore.
Well, they're not serving us anymore.
They're not serving us anymore.
For where we are.
And sometimes because we want to protect ourselves and we want to sterilize everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? We create things that are even worse, right? And that's why that's why it's not the change to go and try to change society. It's not about that. It's about changing you.
Right.
It's about the individuals.
Right.
When an individual feels good about who they are and they allowed others to share their okay and stand up and say, no, that's how they feel. It's okay. You don't have to agree.
Right.
But that's how they feel.
Yeah.
Right. That they radiate respect and love.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That makes a big difference.
Then things begin to change. It's
things
not
start to open up.
It's from it's individual up.
Now you're talking a leadership aspect here.
Oh, but that's the other part. It's like you can't separate them.
You can't. No, you're right. You
can't separate it. So it's like, and I've been thinking about who are the type of people that we want for a soul quest? I don't want I just want to feel great and I just want quiet and everybody's a team. I don't want those type of people. And I'm not searching for you. It's like good for you that you found and you just isolated yourself. There's a call to the adventure to go through the journey of yourself and come back and revitalize your surrounding.
Right.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That's what a leader does. A leader comes and transforms themselves from the inside out to make a change in whatever domain they're in. Because my point of expression, it's not your point of expression. We share a combined area in the circles, right? But somebody else's point of expression is completely different.
Correct.
But that idea of finding that and living from there and impacting positively everything around them, that is what a soul quest is. It's not isolating. It's not separating. It's not going out there and destroying things for the sake of an idea. There is no idea. Ideas will come and they go. The only thing that is important is you.
Well said. We could drop. What is that? Mic drop. We could mic drop right now.
Okay.
No, that was really good because I think it's important to have that understanding and when you're referring to a soul's quest, we're talking about a soul's quest in general. People, the soul's quest.
Yeah,
and transformation.
Again, it starts with the micro, which is the individual, and then it goes into the collective.
Right.
One cannot coexist without the other. What happens if there are no individuals? There won't be no collective.
Right.
And when you have individuals that are not living from there, you get what you get right now.
That's it.
It's
true.
This is like, that's what happens. So now that you're going through all these changes, your personal self, right? That you're going through all these changes and your experiences, what are some tips that you are using to actually go past this stage?
That's a good question. I think, so just a few things that I can share that have really, really been amazing for me is having these little micro check-ins that we've been having. I think that's really important. And I will say that if you don't have somebody to check in with, you can check in with yourself. And I think that means for me, what I have done is I've just been like, okay, where am I at? How am I feeling this morning? What's the temperature? What's going on with me? What happened in this dream? If I had a dream, and just evaluating and taking my time, even if it means getting up a little bit earlier to take that time, and getting myself into a situation where I can sort of unpack what's going on in my head for that day. So I like that. I mean, I have you, thank God. And of course this is something that we invite people to reach out to us for, because we would love to have these types of check-ins with people, right? What's going on? How are you feeling? What's shifting, what's changing? And so that's been helpful for me.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two is that's been very powerful, and it's been a work in progress. Is I wrote a goodbye letter to myself.
Good, nice.
Because I've realized that what I'm doing is I'm saying goodbye to that version of myself that doesn't serve me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did in this letter is I basically thanked my old version of myself for getting me to where I'm at today, and for being so strong to get me to where I'm at today, and for being courageous, for being disciplined, for doing all those things, right? And just saying, thank you, I'm good, you've gotten me this far, but now I'm going to move forward in this direction. And I think that it's an evolving letter, but I think it's an important, and it's a great way to just sort of shed that layer, shed that skin, you know what I mean, if you will. So those are the two things I think that's been the most beneficial for me.
And that's beautifully said, right? Because a lot of the times we don't treat ourselves nicely. You know, we need to forgive ourselves. We need to be kind sometimes to that negative inner voice, to let them know, like you just said, it's okay, I got it now. Thank you. You know, so that's a beautiful example, right?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So a couple things that I do want to do is I want to leave reflection questions for our listeners and our viewers, because I think that if you walk away from this and you're just kind of questioning and you're just kind of teeter-tottering between, you know, what's going on in your life, I think that I invite people to just just sit with these questions and let them sort of marinate, write on them, you know, think on them, record yourself on them, whatever it takes, you know. So I have 3 questions. The first one is, what version of myself am I being invited to release? I think that's a really great question to ask ourselves. The second question is, where in my life does the grief of change show up? That's also that's
a good one.
Good. And the last one is, what would it take, or what would it look like to honor the pain of growth instead of rushing through it? I thought that was amazing, because that's where I'm at. You know what I mean?
And I would love to hear what people have to say, like
Absolutely.
what kind of answers and responses they have for that.
Well, we're always inviting, you know, our viewers and listeners to share with us. And that would be really amazing to start this community of sharing, and this, you know, what did you say earlier? That it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay to be going through this.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for listening to the ASQ podcast. Sacred endings aren't failures. They're invitations. Invitations to reclaim your voice, your peace, and your essence. Subscribe and share with friends. And remember, find meaning, navigate change, and live and lead fully.